Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about the suit of swords in tarot. So I've got my big giant tarot deck out. I'll put a link in the comments for this deck if you want it. It is quite a bit bigger. I don't use it very often for reading. I use it mostly for teaching. But just to compare and contrast, let me see if I've got another deck here. Well, I've got my working deck. So this deck is the gilded deck that I have here, and this is my carrying case that I have for it. I've got it wrapped in, this is Alice in Wonderland cloth that a good friend of mine, Michelle, made for me, and she's got a Facebook page. I'll put her link in the comments below because she does make tarot cloth bags as well, and she's got raw silk in the inside because silk is the best protector for tarot decks. So this is my working deck, and it's the gilded deck. Some of you might recognize it. So this is, you know, it's slightly bigger than a playing card deck, and then this is the giant deck. So it's quite a bit bigger, just to give you some scale, but I like using it for videos and for teaching aids and things like that. And you know, occasionally sometimes it's fun to do a 3-card read with the big giant cards. A little more dramatic if you're looking for some drama kind of thing. But today I'm talking about the suit of swords so that we can continue our studies on tarot. Now the swords are a huge sort of category. They're the biggest, I would say they're the biggest category of all the suits. So that's why I thought I'd tackle it today. It's my second video, and then I'll be doing the other two after that. I think I've already done wands. And then I'll be doing the other two as well. So the swords, like I said, covers a huge area. So when you're reading swords, there's so many possibilities even in just one card. So it covers, the umbrella sort of covering of swords is communication, because communication touches on all of the other aspects of these cards. Because these cards can also talk about legal issues, and the old joke I always use when I'm reading someone is, if you've ever paid a lawyer, you know you're paying them by the word, and words are communication, and lawyers love sending letters back and forth, you know, cease and desist kind of things. So that's why swords can also cover legal issues. Swords also cover education, because when you are being educated on a subject, or if you're being the teacher of a subject, there's lots of notes, there's lots of lectures, there's lots of books, there's tests, there's essays, and all of that is a form of communication, orally, written, and in many forms kind of thing, in reading, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of communication in the form of education. So swords can also speak to education. I happen to live in a university town. I'm in Kingston, Ontario, and Queen's University is here. We also have a couple other education places such as St. Lawrence College and RMC College. So sometimes I'll get some students usually stressing about exams or end of year kind of things, and when they come in to see me, I tend to get a lot of swords in their readings, and I'm like, oh, are you stressing about an exam, or is there an essay coming up that's sort of putting some pressure on you, or whatever it might be. So it can also cover education, and like I said, communication overall. So our thoughts, our words, our ideas, because our thoughts become our words, and our words become a reality, and our ideas, and they are then put into the real world and implemented. The positive aspects of the swords, because the swords can look very gloomy and doomy. A lot of people don't get good vibes off the swords because you feel a little bit like you're being judged with the swords, or not great things are coming, because it is a sword after all, and swords are kind of an aggressive, destructive kind of thing. You'll also find that when you're reading lawyers, a lot of swords come into their spreads, along with anybody in the military, sometimes police officers, things like that, or if the person's married to a lawyer or a police officer or a military person, swords will often come into play. But some of the positive aspects of the swords they talk about courage, they talk about security, they can bring hope. Swords cut to the truth, so there's a cutting to the truth kind of aspect to them. They also, because they're an air element, they talk about they're associated with the mind, which is associated with the air element. So it's also about bringing peace of mind even amid chaos. So that's a positive aspect of that. They can also mean a successful journey. Now there are also, as with every suit, there's negative aspects as well. So some of the negative aspects are spiritual suffering, because that's a more of an air element type of thing that we all need to go through at some point. Agonizing over a decision because we can't make up our minds, or because the decision's just a very difficult one to make. Loneliness, sometimes swords can talk about. They can also talk about sacrifice. They talk about loss, defeat. They can also talk about gossip as a more negative aspect, because the swords do talk about communication. Like I said, their overall is communication. So we're going to begin with the Ace of Swords. Now the Ace of Swords are also in the special cards because they bring gifts. So the Ace of Swords, no matter the deck, is always an opening, a doorway, a gateway, that sort of thing. A new thing is coming. Now a new aspect is coming. And this is often kind of considered a victory card, because we've got the crown here and we've got sort of these laurels, the victory laurels, that sort of thing. And the sword is being presented to us. So it's sort of us taking the sword and using it to forge forward. So that when this card comes, even though it's a special card and brings a gift, it's kind of a victory card too. Like, you've made the right decision, you're going the right way, here, take the sword, you know, that sort of thing. So it's a good aspect most of the time when the Ace of Swords shows up. Now this Two of Swords can be a little bit back and forth, right? So the Two of Swords, she's blindfolded here, sitting in front of waters that are not calm. They're not smooth calm, but they're not rough waters either. So there's a bit of a meeting of the minds that needs to happen, perhaps. The swords are up. So that can be a positive thing, that you're thinking, you're going within. This is a sort of a card where a decision needs to be made, and you need to go within to find that decision. Stop looking around. And so she's purposely blindfolded herself so as not to be distracted. So like I said, this can kind of be a bit of a double-edged sword, so to speak. So this can also be that there's, you know, you're in conflict with someone and you're, you know, off in this direction and they're off in that direction. It is a waning moon that's up there. So it's about also letting go. So maybe letting go of your perspective and seeing the situation through someone else's eyes, letting go of some judgments, perhaps judgments of yourself, judgments of another person, that sort of thing. And then we've got the Three of Swords, and this is one of the cards that I included in the scary cards, because when this shows up, this actually isn't that bad a looking of a card, but in other decks it's usually pretty gruesome and not a fun card to see. I mean, even here it's not fun. I mean, we've got gray clouds, it's raining, there's three hearts, or three swords piercing through a heart. So often this does mean, you know, there's some kind of betrayal, some kind of disappointment. It could be a breakup of a relationship, some argument that's happened. And it's not always a romantic relationship. It could be a severing with a sibling or a parent in some way, that there's been that big enough an argument that you've sort of severed the relationship. This can also be about regret. It's very much like the Tower card, but in the minor arcana form. So not as devastating as the Tower card can be, but same sort of principle, that sometimes things leave our life for a reason, whether it's a person, a situation, or a thing, right? And yes, we're sad in the moment to see them go, but it kind of clears the way for stuff. It also, like I said, it is a card that tends to bring disappointment. Most of the time when this flips up and I ask someone, you know, or I tell someone that there's going to be someone in your life that possibly might disappoint you, it sort of depends on what's before and after the card as well. And a lot of the times the person goes, yeah, I'm pretty sure who that's going to be, right? So often subconsciously they know. And this card is a good card for bringing subconscious things to the surface, for bringing up things that maybe they didn't want to look at. This can also be about regrets that maybe you've had. Maybe you've disappointed people. Maybe you've disappointed yourself. And this, again, is not about living in that disappointment. It's about, now's the time to clear the way. The rains are coming. And at first these rains are tears of sorrow, but now they're cleansing rains. And they're rains to clear the way for new things to come in. That person wasn't serving you well, or it's time for you to let go of the regret that you have and carry forward and try to pay off your karma debt if there's one involved, that sort of thing. And then we've got the Four of Swords. So fours are always sort of resting cards, and this is a resting card. So you can see that this guy is lying on top of here. So sort of a little bit of history here back in sort of the medieval times, maybe just before as well. A lot of men, when they went to war, because there was a lot of wars that were happening between kingdoms and things like that, they would get a coffin made for them, and their effigy would be put on top. And I saw a lot of these when I did a tour of some churches in Europe, and I realized, yeah, people really did do this. So this is what the person looks like. So there's a lot of coffins in churches and whatnot that have what the person looked like that's in that coffin, kind of thing. So they would do this before they went off to war. So this is sort of, you know, your final resting place. But this is a card of leveling up. Because like I say, fours are always that level up number. You can't level up until you see a four come into your life. And the fours are there to give you the sign to rest, because you're about to get very busy and it's about to become a transition time, which is going to be very tiring, and you don't want to go into that transition time tired already. So what this card is all about is about resting, and you'll see that he's got three swords up here, and a lot of times you'll see that there's three swords sort of separate on the Four of Swords card, and then there's a sword usually close by him. So what that's representing is, these are representing the things you've accomplished, the knowledge you've, you know, acquired, the skills you've learned, the diplomacy perhaps that you've learned, the rewards that you've, and accolades and recognition that you've earned, are all up there kind of as reminders to say, look how great you were, or how great you are. Look at the skills you've built so far. You're about to build more. That's why there's this fourth sword here, because it's right handy. Like if he's lying here, he can just reach down and grab that sword, and he's ready to kind of get up and go to battle again. So it's saying you're going to go to battle again in a good way, a transitional way, and that to remind you of what you've already accomplished, but you still have more to learn, as we all do. And then we've got this Five of Swords. So the Five of Swords, this is a little bit of a victory card, although it doesn't look like a nice one. And in some cards it looks even worse, because it's a battlefield and this guy has like three swords, and there's two on the ground, and there's two guys sort of wandering away. This one looks like he's crying. Again, the waters aren't super rough, but they're not smooth sailing either, because fives are always a transition number. And what this is it's a victory with sacrifice. It's a bittersweet victory. So you've had to give up something in order to gain something, and maybe you've had to sacrifice some friends, a situation, some things, whatever it might be, to move forward. So this is a card to say that you are going to gain victory, but be mindful of how you get it, and know that there's going to be some sacrifices, and make the right sacrifices to get there, kind of thing. So now we've got the Six of Swords. And the Six of Swords is a moving forward card. Sixes usually are good cards. They're all about, even in numerology, they're about beauty and love and bliss and all these beautiful things. So this sort of, it looks like a woman maybe in a robe with a little child, and then there's a man sort of rowing them forward. They've got these 6 swords in the boat. Now you'll notice that on this side, the waters are smooth. On this side, there's a bit of a ripple to the waters. Again, not rough waters, but not smooth here, right? So what they're doing is they're moving forward, and a lot of times this represents a movement forward in your life with you bringing your skills and your knowledge and your ideas into smoother sailing, because sixes are about smoother sailing and about being recognized sort of properly for what you're capable of doing. And it's usually a change card too as well, a change of scenery, a movement forward in some way, whether it's in your job or family situation or schooling or whatever it might be. It's a definite, it's a change kind of thing. And then we've got the Seven of Swords, which is also nicknamed the Thief card, because you can see this guy, he's got 5 swords. He looks like he's running away. In most tarot decks, it's even more obvious that he's a thief, and there's 2 swords left behind because he just couldn't hold anymore. And that's what thieves do. They kind of come in and quickly grab what they can and run out kind of thing. So sometimes this card can mean a couple different things. One thing it can mean is, what are you doing to get ahead? Because sevens in tarot often bring disappointment or sort of a hard decision. They're very serious numbers. They're not like 6s, which are kind of joyful, and they're not like 8s, which can mean adjustment. But, you know, there's opportunities with that. 7s are more of a, you got to think about this. All the 7s are, you got to think about this. So this Thief card could be, what are you stealing? And I don't mean you're literally breaking into someone's house. I mean, what are you stealing from yourself, from other people? What are you, is greed getting in the way of you getting ahead in the world? Are you holding stuff to yourself that maybe you should be sharing? That sort of thing. It can also be a suppression of you, or are you suppressing other people? It can be someone stealing your words or stealing your ideas. Because this is, like I said, called the Thief card, but it's not about someone breaking into your house and stealing your purse or stealing your crystal or stealing, you know, your money or anything like that. It's about someone perhaps stealing your words, thoughts, or ideas, because these are swords, right? Or stealing your spiritual peace and calm, right? We all have vampires that we've met, energy vampires. Perhaps there's an energy vampire in your life when this card shows up. It's a good time to examine your circle of friends, because usually this card involves someone that's close enough to you to know how you do things, what your routine's like, how you think, what kind of ideas you have, that they've heard these ideas and now are taking them and using them as their own, or they're stealing your words somehow, whether it's in your career or job, or whether it's at home, or whether it's, you know, even in business if you're an entrepreneur, that sort of thing. So this is the time to kind of examine your circle of friends, because as the old saying goes, you're the average of the 5 closest friends you've got. So it's always good to kind of examine who's in your circle, because it changes from year to year. So who's in your circle right now? Who's closest to you? Look at them. Are they the kind of person you want to be? Because sometimes we get those people that latch on to us, and, you know, they're kind of, they think we're their best friend, but you're like, okay, yeah, you're really nice, but you're not my best friend, kind of thing. So we get those people that kind of latch on and are those energy vampires as well. So that card can talk about that, because they're stealing your energy from you and they're sort of sucking you dry, kind of thing. So then we've got, after that, the 8 of Swords. So the 8 of Swords, I find the most common thing that happens is that I always ask the question of, are you the kind of person that gets stuck in your own head? Do you have anxiety? Do you have worries? And when you worry, do you ramp that worry up into the worst case what if scenario? Because a lot of times this is an indicator that you're there. You're at that worst case what if scenario. You're thinking the worst of everything, and you're expecting and planning for those things, and then when things go bad or sideways, you're like, see, I was right. And that's the thing about us as humans. I find that we often want to be right even when we're wrong. Like if I say, oh, I can never do this, every time I do this things just go sideways on me. So then I go to do this thing and it goes sideways, and I say, see, I was right. Because we like to be right even though we make a wrong, if you get what I'm saying. So this is sort of this card of, are you worst case scenarioing everything in your head? Are you stuck in your head, like just spinning around in worry and anxiety? Because a lot of times in this card in other decks, she's bound, yes. She's blindfolded, yes. She's surrounded by 8 swords, yes. However, the chains or the bindings that are around her are not tied tight. She could just, sometimes they're golden chains and you can just go like this, or you can just willy your way out of, or wiggle your way out of the bondage. She's not bound tight. So it means that you can get out of this. All this bondage is your own thinking. Your blindfolders are the blindfolders or whatever that you've put on yourself because you don't want to see a situation. You're saying, no, I don't want to look at this, la 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 la. And that's what you're doing when this card shows up most of the time. And these 8 swords that are around her are, once she's unbonded, she could just simply pick up a sword and fight the dragon that she's worrying about or whatever. But she doesn't want to face it right now. And you'll notice that the water is a little bit dry. There's like very little water. It looks like it's almost drought time. And there's a gray sky, but no sun or no clouds or anything like that. So this often speaks to it. You feel alone. You feel alone in what you're doing. Everyone's sort of abandoned you. Even, the waters abandoned you. The clouds and sunny skies have abandoned you. That sort of thing. So a lot of times you're wrapped up in your own head. You feel alone. So ask your client, do you feel alone in this situation right now? And then go through, what is the worst case scenario you're thinking of right now? And often, even in just talking it out, it's not as bad as they think it is. They've created a mountain, notice the mountain in the background, out of a molehill. And not that you're diminishing what they're worried about. They probably have a legitimate worry about it. But often when we start to worry about something, we make it much bigger than it needs to be. And sometimes we feel overwhelmed. So this is often a card when someone's feeling overwhelmed. I remember as a kid, my mother would send me up to clean my bedroom, for instance. And my bedroom was a wreck. And as a little kid, it was so overwhelming because I didn't even know where to begin, right? So we get into adult situations like that where we're the little kid who has to clean this room and we don't even know where to begin. So a lot of times in talking it out with someone, and that's why tarot readings are so important and very helpful in life. We look at the cookie that's in front of you, or we look at the room that needs to be cleaned in front of you, metaphorically speaking, and we say, okay. And sometimes when there's someone who has no skin in the game, so to speak, they can see, well, like if you pick this up, or if you took this one bite of the cookie, that's one bite. That's one little bit less of the cookie that there is to eat, or there's one more thing that's not needing to be tidied in your room. And, like I often use the cookie expression because it's like you can only eat it one bite at a time. No matter what you do, there's no way. This is a giant cookie. Like, it's off the screen giant. You're not going to be able to fit your mouth around it. So don't try to bite off half of it. Because for some reason, as humans, that's what we tend to do. We see this giant cookie that has to be eaten. And it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to eat all of this? You're going to eat it one bite at a time. Like you eat every other thing that is put in front of you for eating. So this is a very healthy cookie, by the way. Full of chocolate chips and very healthy. So you can't eat half the cookie in one bite. And it doesn't serve you well to take giant bites because you end up choking and coughing and sputtering out all kinds of crumbs and stuff. Not good, not a good look. So just bite it one bite at a time. Keeps you classy, keeps you graceful, and eventually you'll eat the cookie. So just do it one bite at a time. This is sort of my version of the nickname of the cookie card. One bite at a time. That's all you can do. Then we've got the 9 of Swords. So the 9 of Swords, I will often ask if there's been some sleepless nights in your life. And again, it's very close to the 8 of Swords. So this is also about adjustments too. 8s are usually about adjustments that need to happen. So the 9 of Swords is, you know, have you been, again, worrying? You're not bound up, you're not trapped in your own head, but it comes through in your sleep, right? So this is a good time to sort of keep track of your dreams, because dream journaling is important, but the trick to good dream journaling is not just writing down your dreams and going, oh geez, I wonder what that purple gorilla means in my dream, and why was he, you know, eating a pineapple, or something weird like that. The trick to dream journaling is looking back. So our mind, our subconscious mind, speaks very much in the same way that tarot does, through symbols. And symbols are not necessarily interpreted just one at a time. They need a pattern. So when you're dream journaling, write down your dreams for 4, 5, 7 days in a row or 7 nights in a row, and look back on that and see what's the pattern. Because it's amazing what you'll see, because a lot of us will have a dream. It might be a very vivid, very weird kind of dream. Oh, I will never forget this dream. Like the other night I had a dream about this beautiful desk that I got, but it was a puzzle desk and it had all kinds of secret drawers and it was really cool. It was teak and beautifully made, and oh, I'm like, oh, I want this desk. But in looking back, you know, so when I journal these dreams, I look back and I'll see where that desk kind of fits in. And that's the thing, is looking back, you'll start to see a pattern, because as humans, we recognize 2 things. It's in our DNA. We can't help but notice them. The first thing is faces. We always see faces. That's why people are saying, I saw Jesus Christ in this piece of toast, and I saw a face in the moon, kind of thing. We're geared to see faces. Even when they're not there, we'll recognize that pattern of faces. That goes to the second thing that we always notice as humans, is we notice patterns. Over and above everything else, we notice faces and patterns. So when our subconscious mind speaks to us, it speaks to us in a very symbolic way. So it doesn't come right out and say, Rhonda, you need to do this. It comes out with purple elephants and gorillas eating pineapples and, you know, weird puzzle desks and things like that. And then I have to get the pattern of that and look back on it and see what the pattern is. And that's the way you can read what your subconscious mind is trying to say to you. So when this card shows up, a lot of times it means, even if you've fallen off the dream journal wagon, and that's okay, because people feel like they have to do everything every day. If we did everything we were supposed to do every day, we'd be doing nothing but dream journaling, journaling our thoughts, meditating all the time. And yes, I mean, it's great when you can do that, but sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to do it all the time every day, or to make time every day, and it becomes a pressure thing. And it's not supposed to be an unpleasurable pressure thing. It's supposed to be something that comes easy and relaxed. So let it in when it's time, but don't feel guilty if you haven't let it in a couple of days, in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months, because people always feel like it's that diet that you got to start on Monday morning kind of thing. You can start it any time you want. You can get on and off that bandwagon. you know, just try to bring it in every once in a while. And when you're bringing it in, know that that's a time that you really actually need this right now. So this is what this card is about, finding out what the sleepless nights are all about when you're talking to your client, but also knowing, because it's a 9 and because there's roses on this blanket, that's a sign of hope. That means the solution is coming. The solution is coming, so know that the sleepless nights are going to be over very soon. And then we've got the 10. So the 10 speaks about gossip for the most part, because you can see it's not a pleasant looking card. I believe I included it in my scary cards, because you can see this guy is lying on the ground and he's got 10 swords in his back, and most of the time it's a card with a guy lying on the ground with 10 swords in his back. Now, the nice thing is the water is smooth, but there is a red line. And I believe this is a red line of sort of blood. So blood has been poured. Blood has been spilled, I mean. And he's got a red cloak here. And as I've mentioned in other videos, red is kind of that color like black belts are in karate. So when you wear a red cloak or a red belt or, you know, that sort of thing, it's a sign of knowledge. It's also a power color, of course, too. But it is, in the metaphysical world, very much a sign of, you know, she knows what she's talking about, or he knows what he's talking about. He's got this knowledge. Because like I said, it's like the black belt of karate. You're just a little bit more knowledgeable, more expanded somehow. So a lot of times this is about gossip or your haters, so to speak, you know, people that have been against you. And the nice thing is it's a 10, so it means you're not going to die from it. It's over. The cycle of the gossip or the people that are hating on you or jealous of you. And also too, in sort of another way, another perspective is, what are you looking at that perhaps are you jealous of people in your life? Because what that is comparing. And when you compare, you weaken yourself. So you don't want to compare, because you're on a journey different from everybody else's, and everybody else is on a different journey than you are, and we're all just trying to get up the same mountain, so to speak. So this is a card also to like reflect on, have you been comparing yourself and looking at someone and going, oh, they're so much better, or how come they got success and I didn't, and yet we're both in the same place in your head, in your perspective, and you know, you're hating on them. Or it can be about people hating on you and gossiping about you, perhaps trashing you, and being a little slanderous even, and that sort of thing. But the gift is that you know it's coming to an end. You're wronged is about to be righted, is what I mean. So, you know, whether it's someone talking badly about you, the truth will come out, because the swords always bring the truth. And same thing if you've been hating on someone. So it's sort of a be mindful of what you talk about. Perhaps are you gossiping too much? You know, are you playing into like, well, I heard that she, you know, kind of thing, right? Like, are you helping to accelerate that or pass it along or whatever, that sort of thing? Or is it, you know, you the subject of that gossip, knowing that that's about to end and the truth of you will come out, that, you know, you are not the horrible person that people have been gossiping about, or the truth will come out that, you know, you've been gossiping about one of your best friends perhaps, and they find out and know that you haven't been true to them as far as a friend goes. Now, I'll just briefly go over the court cards, because I did a special video about the court cards. So we've got the Page of Swords here. He's usually a young person. It can be a he or she. They're sort of non-gendered, the pages, and they always bring messages. So when you get a Page of Swords, you have a message as far as, you know, swords are concerned, about communication. Sometimes when a page comes in, it means good news is coming. So if you see this along with a, like say a wand card that's talking about your career, good news is coming as far as your career goes. Perhaps maybe it's that job offer you've been waiting for, and that sort of thing. Now, then we've got the Knight of Swords. They're always about movement forward, or at least talking about movement forward. I always like when I see a Knight of Swords when it's a relationship reading, and we've got cups around, and then we've got this Knight of Swords. It will often mean in that case that movement forward as far as communication goes. So you're opening up, or your partner's opening up, and you're able to speak in a better format to each other. You're not speaking in a accusatory way. You're being more understanding with each other. You're listening to each other, because swords, they are about communication, and communication isn't just about speaking. It's also about listening. So when this card shows up as far as relationships go, I really like seeing that, oh, your communication is going to move forward. So this is a good sign. So this can also be good as far as work goes too. I mean, in anything, right? Even in health. I just recently did a health reading for a client, and she was worried, and this card showed up. And I said, oh, are you being better about how you speak to your doctor? Are you going in and saying, look, this is what I need, and you need to listen to me? Because sometimes, you know, we go into the doctor and we forget what we're going to say, or we just go, oh yeah, okay, and we just yeah the doctor, because he's the all-knowing, all-seeing kind of, you know, he knows way more than I do, or she knows way more than I do, and we just kind of nod our heads and then leave. I know I've been guilty of that, but a lot of times we have to take a proactive movement or move in our health, and really learn to communicate with our doctors, and really learn or really teach our doctors how to communicate with us, and that this is not the norm for me, my body doesn't feel right, or whatever, so that they don't just go, oh, it's probably just this, or, you know, it's just old age, or whatever. That sort of thing. Not saying that all doctors do that, but, you know, in this particular health reading, it was more of a, yeah, I'm getting more firm with my doctor kind of thing. So that was a good sign. And it meant she was taking better control of her health as well. So that was always good. So now we've got the Queen of Swords. So this card is actually nicknamed the Widow's card. So it doesn't mean you're going to be widowed. It's like the Death card. It doesn't mean when you get the Death card, someone's going to die or you're going to die. But I do ask, you know, are you married? And if they say no, and if they're an older lady or an older man, I'll ask, did you lose a partner? And sometimes even a younger person, I'll be like, did you lose a partner? Because even divorce feels like death. It's as stressful as death as losing a partner. So sometimes this is called the Widow's card, so it can cover, you know, someone who's lost a partner through death or lost a partner through divorce. If that's not the case, that's okay. But that's just something to keep in mind, that the cards reveal to you, the reader, aspects of your client as well, or the person you're reading, so that you kind of get an inside view of who they might be. The other thing that this speaks to as the Widow's card is that the person might feel very alone and perhaps even abandoned right now. You know, maybe they're going through a very tough situation, whether personally or professionally, and they feel like they've been abandoned, or health-wise. You know, it's amazing, like, when you get a big disease, how many people don't stick around, kind of thing, right? And you might feel very alone in your battle against whatever health thing, or alone in this decision, or alone in this situation, whether, like I said, it's personally or professionally. So that's another question to ask, like, is there a big thing happening in your life that maybe you feel a little alone, or you feel like you've been abandoned? Sometimes this can show up when a mother's feeling like her nest is a little empty as well, because some mothers feel like their children have abandoned them. And, you know, I often remind them, well, you did a good job then, because that's what the baby birds are supposed to do. They're supposed to leave the nest. And then we celebrate and we make their bedroom into a craft room or a gift wrapping room. But that's a card to think about too, like, because queens are always get her done girls, but this one has a little bit of an extra special meaning, being the Widow's card. So those are some questions to ask, or to have some insight on, But queens are always about movement forward too, because they're the get her done girls, like I said in my other video about the court cards. So then we've got the King of Swords. Like I said, we're going to go quickly through the court cards. So this is the last one. And the King of Swords, you'll notice all the swords are upright. So they tend to have more positive aspects to them. And they're very firm and forward. They don't beat around the bush. Like I said, they're very much about cutting to that truth and shedding light onto things. And they're about that spiritual movement forward and that mental fortitude that sometimes we need in certain situations in life. So the king, when they show up, like I said in my other video, they're about refocusing or remastering or being the master of a situation. So the swords could be, you know, maybe someone close to you has died and you've had to be the strong one for the rest of the family to get through this. So you've had the mental and spiritual fortitude and have that kingly energy of, I'm going to lead you through this darkness until we come out on the other side. It can also be a refocusing. So refocusing on how you're speaking. This very much speaks to what kind of diplomacy are you doing or exuding in your life. I mean, it's one thing to speak the truth, but there's speaking the truth kindly and gently, and there's being very blunt and forceful and almost mean about it, right? So the king is not blunt, and he is not mean about what he says. He says things with great diplomacy, as does the queen. They speak with great diplomacy. They're firm, and they'll give you tough love, but they'll give it to you gently. They might look serious and stern, and they are, don't get me wrong. They will tell you the truth, but they'll always deliver it gently. Just like I'm a non-filter reader, I'll tell you the good news with the bad, but I always try to embrace the King and Queen of Swords in that I try to always deliver the news with great gentleness and with great compassion. So I hope that helped you learn a little bit more about the sword suit in the Minor Arcana, and I will be back on with more tarot lessons later on. So please keep your eye on my channel for more videos going up, not only about tarot, but other mystical and magical things as well. Please put in the comments anything that you would like to see information about. Please subscribe to my channel so you know when the videos are going up. You'll get a little notification. And please like this video because it just helps other people find it as well if they're looking for information on the swords of the Minor Arcana of the Tarot. So I'm Lady Rose, also known as Rhonda Devlin Gilbert. You can find me on Facebook at Goddess Garage or at Goddess Garage Tarot Parlor. And thank you so much for being here, and I hope you'll join me again. Bye.